p.m. here at Town Hall. My first duty is, which I'm very happy to perform, I send a warm welcome to Claire Cummings, who is our newest member of the Planning Board. Welcome aboard. We're glad to have you. Second of all, if it's okay with the board, I'd like to switch two things. I'd like to do number 7 first, after Albert, and then go down and do 6 last. So we will spend as much time as we have on that and then pick it up again tomorrow.
Yep.
So is that okay with everyone? All right,
Yep.
fine. Okay, numbers 1 and 2 are our agenda is 32 Dodge Street, Plat 6, Lot 138 and Lot 141. Dodge Street, public hearing for an application for development plan review for an application for a special use permit under Article 3, Section 311E and Article 4, Section 407 for an addition to the Surfside. Construction of 2 accessory hotel rooms and to expand the accessory building.
I'm going to go ahead and recuse
You
myself
have to
from
be,
this.
okay,
Yep.
Bill is recusing himself.
What's that?
And, yeah, you have to step out.
I know, I am.
Okay.
Hi, Joseph Priest.
Do I need a motion before we start for the hearing?
Just, you need to open the hearing.
Okay. I would make a motion to open the hearing on 32 Dodge Street. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, Joe.
Joseph Priestley,
She
rep,
can,
rep-
okay. Go ahead.
Joseph Priestley representing 32 Dodge Street.
I don't think that's on, or,
It's green lit.
all right,
Hello?
I can't hear it.
Okay, that's good.
That's good.
Joseph Priestley representing 32 Dodge Street. This is an application for a special use permit to basically redo an existing old rundown hotel building and to add, to take the building in the back that's an existing shed and convert it into 2 accessory hotel rooms and to build a new building between it and Persephone's as a 3rd accessory hotel room. There'll be 12 rooms in the main hotel and 3 accessory hotel rooms. We originally had a more aggressive design, and we had a CRMC advisory opinion that basically, if we wanted to put the restaurant in the back, and build into the back area, would have required essentially excessive revegetation, which would have resulted in the loss of all the parking area. They've toned the application down to what it is now and had all new construction, new external construction outside the 200-foot limit. The building in the back is within the 200-foot limit, but it won't be modified at all on the outside. And so all the new construction is with the 200-foot limit, and therefore we can maintain the existing parking area as it is, and it will provide 17 parking spaces, and the Surfside really only requires 6. So I have this evening Joseph Duhamel from Dupree Engineering, who will explain the site plan. I have Mark Butler, Matuna guy, he's a landscape architect. He'll describe the landscape architect. Glenn Gardner is the architect. He's here and will describe the buildings themselves, for which we already have HDC approval for massing, for design as is, and for the landscape that's being presented. And then finally, Rich Cooper from 32 Dodge Street is here if you have any questions for him. So my first witness is Joe Duhamel.
Joe, welcome.
You're gonna use the microphone, Joe,
Okay,
because the,
We'll share.
Yes.
everyone cannot hear, yeah.
Are you going to swear the witnesses, or?
Bill, can you swear the witnesses in?
I see him.
I see him,
But I don't hear him.
Oh, you know what, Margie, can you ask Bill, I don't have a microphone, so he can't hear me.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm having trouble hearing you guys. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you just fine. We'd like
Okay,
you to
good.
swear it. Can you swear
Yep,
in our
will do.
witness?
Mr. Duhamel, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Please state your name for the record.
Joseph Duhamel,
And what is your occupation?
project engineer,
And how long have you worked as a project engineer?
11 years with Dupree Engineering.
And was Dupree engaged to do the engineering and surveying work necessary and incidental to the development of this lot?
Yes,
And And have you been the project manager for Dupree assigned to this project?
For this project, I've
Margie, can you just ask Bill if he can hear them now, because I can't hear them coming
Okay.
through the microphone.
Bill, can you hear them okay, so we know whether or not?
Yeah, not really. I mean, I can vaguely hear Jen. I can hear Joe Priestley and Joe Duhamel enough to be able to follow.
Okay,
So maybe just move the microphone.
I was gonna say, maybe you could,
I'm not really sure why.
Aye. Can you hear me?
That's a little better.
Okay.
Thank you.
Joe, can you briefly describe the site and the project?
Yes. Dupree Engineering was retained to provide surveying and engineering services for the proposed hotel project. The site has obtained a Class 1 survey. We've topoed, we've surveyed the existing features of the property and surrounding areas. The proposed hotel itself will have a small addition on the existing building with a separate cottage in between Perceptionist and the Surfside building. In addition, the project will have the existing garage transformed into accessory units. The shaded areas on the plan indicate the additions or the accessory buildings that will be on for the property.
In performing this work, did you obtain ultimately obtain CRMC preliminary determination number D 2021-12-021 from the Coastal Resources Management Council?
Yes, we did.
How did that PD influence the design of the project?
That early preliminary determination for CMC had the project team look at the scope of the work. We refined what we were doing for the project and really reduced the improvements that we're looking to do on the site. We're below the threshold of CRMC structural coverage and pulled back all the proposed improvements outside of the 200-foot jurisdiction. The mentioned existing building straddles the 200-foot, I'll point to it in a second, 200-foot jurisdiction limit. That will have no exterior additions or improvements.
okay, so where is the parking for that?
The parking will be accessed through the existing.
Yeah, I know how you get there, but where is it at? Show us on that map, if you will.
The existing gravel.
Okay.
Parking behind it.
Okay,
As part of the hotel, there's only six spaces, and there's, as we stand, 17.
Mr. Butler, the landscape architect,
Yeah,
will
do
explain
some
that in
more
some
fine.
greater detail and
okay, I'll
how we
hold for
plan to
that.
do it.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Joe.
Did your firm also prepare the Surfside Hotel narrative drainage letter dated May 27th, 2022?
Yes,
And did you prepare a stormwater systems operation and maintenance plan dated May 31, 2022?
yes,
Did you review a copy of Mr. Jeremiah's memorandum to the planning board dated September 22, 2022?
yes, that is true.
And can you explain to the board how the design of the project addresses the concerns Mr. Jeremiah raised in his letter?
Yes, Mr. Jeremier's letter highlights the February 16th CRMC preliminary determination letter, which expands upon the comments for buffering and increase in structural lot coverage for the design we had before.
And the redesign, basically, your understanding is that with the redesign, the buffering that would have been required is no longer required, and the existing parking area will be able to be maintained as is?
That is true, as is. No improvements to the existing gravel parking.
Could you please describe any relevant constraining factors on the site intrinsic to the site?
For the proposed hotel project, the site as a developed feature, we designed within the constraints of the CRMC's jurisdiction limit, zoning, and what's allowed for the parcel.
Could you describe your stormwater systems operation and maintenance plan?
The stormwater system proposed is a stone dry well that would treat the water quality system for the increased impervious rooftop. That O&M maintenance plan describes the short-term and long-term maintenance of the dry well.
And how, can you describe your drainage analysis, please?
The proposed dry well has been sized for the water quality treatment of the increase in impervious rooftop area.
So will runoff from the site after construction be any more significant than it is before the construction?
No.
You provided certain test holes on the site. Could you describe them and how they fit into your plans?
We performed soil evaluations for the property, for the site. The test hole data included gravelly sand loam with seasonal high groundwater tables of 60 inches, 72 inches. We used that data to design the dry well system so that stormwater could infiltrate.
Will the hotel be connected to the municipal water and municipal sewer?
Yes,
I know your plans do show a couple of wells in the vicinity of the building between the existing building and Persephone's. Have those already been abandoned, in fact?
I don't know that one.
Will they will not be used as part of this project?
They will not be used, no, that's correct.
Mr. Jerem, another thing noted by Mr. Jeremia was that you required a 4,507 gallon per day water allocation. Was this request made in connection with the earlier iteration of the proposal that included the restaurant?
Yes,
And this proposal removes the restaurant?
yes,
And are you in fact going before the Water Commission Monday night requesting a significantly lesser water allocation for this?
yes.
Approximately how much are you requesting?
Approximately 1,000 gallons, 800 gallons per day.
And your understanding is that the project is indeed dependent ultimately on water allocation?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, that's the big gotcha.
Will all the utilities to the site be underground?
Yes,
Are the soils and subsoils on the site suitable for the buildings, driveway, parking area, and other site improvements proposed?
yes, they are.
Does your sediment control plan conform to the requirements of the town's soil erosion and sediment control ordinance?
Yes,
And does it minimize proposed filling, cutting, clearing, or grading, and preserve natural vegetation and topography where possible?
yes,
Does the plan for the construction of the hotel and the accessory hotel rooms consider and protect against any degradation of surface or groundwater quality?
Yes, it protects against the degradation of surface and groundwater quality.
Is that by the use of dry wells?
Correct. Yes. Treating the proposed increase of rooftop area.
I have no more questions from Mr. Duhamel. The board has any questions?
Anybody on the board have questions? Okay, Sosha, go ahead.
What information have you gathered regarding the storm tools?
Can you just use your microphone so
Here.
to make
Oh,
sure
I am
you're
so
Here,
sorry.
over the
Dim?
Now I got two. What information have you gathered regarding the use of storm tools to better understand the effects of sea level rise?
In regards to this area of the development, this building and the improvements is outside of the FEMA flood zone, where the storm tools doesn't have an effect on the area. There's no sea level rise issues on this
They're out
particular.
of the flood zone, so there wasn't a reason to do it.
Okay,
Correct.
all right.
Anything else?
Could I just make a point?
Yeah, Grace, go ahead.
This has been a pet peeve of mine forever, and here's a good example of it. Remember when we talked, the regulations, so the zoning regulations say that dormers have to be so many inches or feet from the edge of the roof? And to a layman, this is not a dormer, but it is correct. In other words, technically it is a dormer, but I would argue that this is the roof as well as this, even though from your perspective, this is the roof line. And I just think that is misleading for the record.
And Ms. Cohen, Mr. Gardner, the architect, will engage that discussion with you.
That's fine, he can prepare his remarks. Any other questions? Allison or Jen, questions?
I have questions later, but.
Okay.
Jim Jeremia is, the town engineer, is on Zoom. I don't know if
Um,
has any questions or
Let me,
comments.
let me borrow this back here. Jim, have you got any questions?
Yes, I do.
Good, please go ahead.
In my review, one of the things, while I don't disagree with the approach on the stormwater management plan, nor the infiltration system, I did not see, examples of the test holes. They were not provided in the documents I received. So I just need to know that what the elevation of the test holes were by the soils evaluator to make a final comment on the infiltration system. So obviously we need a separation between groundwater and the bottom of the infiltrators. If I can get that information, I can say, attest to, yes, it will work, or no, it's in groundwater and it's going to be a problem. I did not have that at the time of my review. My second comment, and it relates to what I think is the most important, is the water allocation. Right now, the Water Commission, I can't speak for them, but they are meeting on water allocation. And you know, there's been some issues with water allocation for the upcoming year. So whether it's the 4,000, I'm glad they seem to reduce it down to 1,000, but that's a new application, and it will have to go in line with others that have applied and are waiting for allocation. So at this time, until Monday, they may not have water, but that's a decision that will be made on Monday by the Water Commission. And as far as the CRMC, with the redirection and the modifications, they have addressed my concerns with the CRMC in my comment letter.
Joe, do you have the water table figures here?
I do.
And we'll submit those, and then
Joe, if you can email me that,
Yeah, I can send you a PDF. Yep,
thank you.
no problem.
and just to repeat, you're before the board, the Water Commission board on Monday night on behalf of 32 Dodge Street.
Yep. Yeah, we've been talking, discussing with John Bruneg, Black Island Water, the allocation and what we need for this site, and we're pending on Monday. We're here.
Does the Surfside have a allocation currently?
They do, yes.
So how much higher are you going to be asking for? Over what the current allocation is?
Working with John Bruneg, he's requested that we request the full, say 15 rooms, subtracted out what's existing. So it's roughly 1,000. I think it's.
Madam Chair, one of the problems with the allocation, the SURF's present allocation, each year we've tracked the last 5 years, they've grossly used their allocation. So they've exceeded their allocation year after year after year for at least the last 5 years that we've been tracking years. So
As we understand it, the allocation being required by the Water Commission is 100 gallons per room per day, which is 1,500 gallons per room, per day. The existing SURF allocation is 658 gallons per day. So we need roughly 842 additional gallons per day, and that will address the overusage as well. Also, it's been used for 27 beds for employees who are working there. It's you're gonna have, and actually, we anticipate a reduction in actual usage when it's used as a hotel, but nonetheless, we still have to get the full allocation for the 1,500 gallons a day.
So how much are you requesting?
We're requesting 1,500 gallons a day total. We have 658, so we're an additional 842.
But right now, you're going over the 650 allocation.
Yeah, that's what we understand, yes. And I think it relates to the employee housing use. I think that our proportionate use will decrease when we have a hotel, but nonetheless, we're raising the allocation so that we will have enough allocation for the proposed use.
Okay.
I guess I'm just kind of curious why we're here until, like, if you don't have it yet.
We can, approvals can be made contingent upon, construction can become contingent upon, and this may be a 2 or 3 year project so basically the planning board can recommend that we get it approved contingent upon water allocation. Zoning board can also approve it, but ultimately contingent, it can make any building permit issued, occupancy permit issued contingent upon water allocation.
Even though it expires, the zoning board decision expires after 1 year, so that's why.
I don't think there's any reason why we can't begin construction as long as we don't know that we can't occupy until we have the allocation.
I beg to, Joe, I'm not the lawyer and maybe Bill can step in, but you can't pull a building permit if you don't have water allocation to use on the expansion. Am I correct, Bill? I
No,
mean,
that's correct. I think that's been the building official's practice, is to confirm the allocation availability.
if you don't have allocation, you can't stop building. You can't pull a permit, respectfully.
In which case, we would have to then wait for the 1 year to become close to expiring. If we haven't been able to pull a permit, we will move to continue, move to extend the permit for another additional year. You have procedures for that.
That is a building permit issue, so I don't think it constrains what the planning board is doing on development plan review or the advisory to the zoning board, but it's an issue the applicant's gonna have to manage.
Gail?
I'm not, is this the time to ask a question about parking or?
No. I got told it's when it gets to landscaping.
Another, okay, terrific. And how about the building use?
We're gonna present Mark Butler, who will address landscape issues and parking issues.
Perfect.
And then we're gonna present Glenn Gardner, the architect, who will describe the building and how it's to be used.
Terrific, thank you.
Okay. Any questions from the audience relating just to the engineering part? Yes, that has to do with what Joe has discussed, correct? Okay, fine.
Carolyn, a neighbor. My quick question is just, are the outdoor showers going to drain into the sewer? The outdoor showers, which one is located right outside Persephone's restaurant, a food establishment, and the outdoor shower that is in the back attached to the barn, what I call the barn, will they drain into the septic system, or are they going to be standing water? Is that
That's definitely
an
engineering.
acceptable question? Thank you.
As far as the discharge into sewer, if it's applicable, would coordinate that with sewer department. Certainly could provide a drywall system for the shower, but intention is to just connect into plumbing.
So what? Sorry, your intention is for it to go in the sewer? Is that on the plan?
That is
Yeah.
Originally drywall.
Into the sewer, because what I'm sure I'm hearing is I do not want the water running into Persephone's business that's right next door.
Or standing water.
Or standing water, yes. We can look at those.
Good, but, okay, so add that to your list.
I think we're saying we can connect it to the sewer.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions? All right, Joe, your next item?
My next witness is Mark Butler.
Mr. Butler, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Butler, what's your occupation,
I'm a landscape architect.
and How long have you worked as a landscape architect?
20-plus years.
And you've prepared the landscape plan for the 32 Dodge Street in connection with the Surfside.
I did.
And has that landscape plan that you submitted been approved by the Historic District Commission?
It has, contingent upon reviewing a gate. They wanted to get some details on that, but yes, it has.
And would you please describe the landscape plan for the board?
I imagine the board has the updated plan. We did supply that. I have a copy here in case someone hasn't seen it.
Why don't you go through it, because just so we're all on the same page. I'm not sure I have it either, which is why I'm asking them to go through it.
Updated landscaping plan circulated. You have in your packet. It was submitted. No, it would have been an 11 by 17.
I got interior and exterior renovations.
11 by 17, one-page landscape
Okay.
plan that was updated.
No,
and,
I don't have it.
Gail, that was the original plan. HTC had
I'm
requested
not
some.
sure, Joe, some of us have it, so let's assume we do not have it and start at the beginning, if you will, please, Mark.
So here's our 200-foot setback for CMC jurisdiction, and we've kept all of our improvements outside of that. Essentially, we have a walkway coming into the east side of the surf side. That walkway is made out of brick. It's been approved by HTC. It brings us down to a lower entrance to the basement of the existing building. We also have, between the new accessory building and the existing building, we have a deck that comes around between the two buildings. We have a small bit of brick pavers as you enter into it. And then we're replacing the fence in kind between Persephone's. There's an existing picket fence. We're going to replace that. We put in a few different trees, some grasses. There's a privet hedge between Persephone's and the new accessory structure, but going through Conservation Commission last night, they asked us to change that to Clethra or Viburnum Vinctium, so we agreed to do that. Everything is very, very minimal. In a sense, it's going to stay pretty much the way it is now, it's just those minor improvements.
Would you please describe the parking plan for the board?
The parking has existed as it is for decades, to my knowledge. I've been coming out here since I was just this big, and I think it's pretty much stayed the same, and we're going to leave it just as is. We need an allocation for this development for 6 spaces, I believe, in total. We've been watching and monitoring how many different cars can be parked there throughout the summer, and since the owners have taken it over, and it's very common to see 17 or more cars back there. Intuitively, they've been figuring it out. We can't do much in the way of improvements to this without getting entangled with CRMC issues, so we want to be able to keep that parking as it is, that has its function for decades, and use it.
So we're not talking about drawing lines, we're just talking about leaving the soils as they are and allowing people to continue parking as they have been.
That's right.
Have you guys finished, or you,
If you want to ask a question, we can, we're fine.
okay, fine.
I was just wondering, is that parking also for the main hotel as well? And how many spaces does the main hotel need?
The main hotel pre-exists any parking requirements, so it technically has none. But with the way it's designed, we have 6 spaces that we need to satisfy this project, and it has, and it can satisfy 17. So essentially, there's 11 additional spaces that can serve the main hotel. In addition, across the street at the new employee housing place, there are 12 approved places, which will be used first for employees who work there, but we don't anticipate that many cars, and then any pour over will go there too. So basically, they essentially provide most of the parking in this part of town.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, go ahead.
I just have a quick question about the parking too, because unfortunately, one of the neighbors isn't here to attest or state her complaint, but it's kind of always a little bit of a mess back there. And I'm wondering, because everything's going to be so upgraded and, you know, the hotel's being upgraded and this is being upgraded. is it going to just continue being, as it has been for the last 30 years, 40 years, however long? I would think something should be done to make it a little more organized, or, someone had said there's a lot of old cars there, cars that don't move, cars that come and go. I can't really attest to it, I'm not looking at it daily, but just seems to be a little bit disheveled compared to everything else that's happening.
Isn't there signage on the split rail fence for parking spaces? Right. So there's signage on the split rail. You can't do anything major, like pave it because of CRMC. I don't think anybody would want that
And I
anyway.
don't think we'd want to pave it
No,
either.
you don't
So
want,
I guess my
no.
question for Gail is what would fix that problem?
It's a good question.
I mean,
I don't know either,
I know signage never works.
yeah.
I mean, I don't have a suggestion either, other than those cement wheel stops that,
Mr. Cooper assures me that they're not going to allow cars to stay there that don't belong there. It's going to be maintained, it's going to be monitored more carefully as a parking space for the inns. So he said that's been worked on already, and it will continue to be worked on.
That's a question from Jen.
Okay, Jen?
I think that the parking spaces should be shown on a plan, with the lines identified, all of the spaces identified, and the loading zone that is required identified. It doesn't mean the planning board may say you don't have to build it that way, but it should be shown on the plan, so when the surf goes to do something else and you're tying parking together, we're not just looking at an empty lot, because right now that lot is undeveloped.
We went back and forth with that. There is a plan that exists. It's a matter of flipping a switch and all those lines will come on. We did organize the spaces to comply with the appropriate size bay and travelways and all that. And we were able to organize, I believe it still was 17 spaces that conformed with the ordinance.
And we will submit that to you following the hearing, so you'll have it on your records.
it certainly would be helpful,
Yeah.
just for,
Because we've all been
Just
a
for the
little-
visual.
We're all a little bothered, as you can tell by the
Yeah,
lack
no.
of seeing parking on there.
Understood.
Since it's
We
been
went
drilled
back
at
and
us to a
forth,
day
yeah.
one, we don't have enough parking here.
Yeah, no, understood.
And now be sure to include the loading zone, that is a requirement, and you're not asking for variance from the loading zone.
Sure.
Okay.
Is there a dedicated space already for that you could point to on the plan, or is that not?
For the handicap,
For loading zone?
loading just for,
Deliveries and things.
like Cisco truck.
we don't have a kitchen there any longer.
It says for commercial property, unless you're not going to receive any material at all from like UPS, I mean, I'm sure you will.
From UPS or?
It's like to receive packages and material.
Sure.
So it's described in the parking section of the zoning ordinance, it's under, the parking and then B1. So
Yeah, we'll be happy to make sure that we do accommodate that. I don't see that being a problem.
And we will submit that to the board within the next few days following the hearing tonight.
Okay. Any questions from the audience?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay,
Shall I stand up again?
please, and use the microphone because the people watching at home.
Thank you. So my question is a little bit backwards in terms of what the SURF does predate, but what would kick in requirements for the SURF to have to show parking? Like, there's been so much change there over the years. There's now a restaurant, there's now retail, there's a rented event space. When would the SURF then have to show the legitimate parking required for what is a large hotel? Thank you.
I don't know if all of those uses are listed in their zoning certificate, so I can take a look at that.
My understanding is that they would have to show parking when they came before the zoning board for relief that required parking. The short answer.
Okay. All right, go ahead, Joe.
I have no further questions.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I do actually. Can you describe the lighting plan for the board?
Oh,
I
yes.
meant to. Jeez.
Thank you.
Right.
You beat me to it. Very good.
We kept it very, very simple. We just kept everything attached to buildings at the doors and points of egress.
Okay. And
So
you
there's
have
no-
looked at our lighting, so you know it has to be down.
Yes,
Face down. Okay.
absolutely.
Sky night.
That-
We're very fond of our sky at night.
Yeah, there are no fixtures with outputs over 1,800 lumens.
No.
There are no light fixtures with actually 900 lumens or above. And basically, describe the nature of the lights on the buildings and where they're going to be located.
We're gonna have some at the doors. We're gonna have some at that door and then here over.
And they'll all be facing down.
We're all face down,
Yeah.
sconce lights.
Yeah.
Nothing's going up, they're all shrouded.
Now, will you have any lights along the walkways?
No.
Okay.
What about in the back, if someone is utilizing the parking area to get through the buildings to the structures, if they're staying at the little cottage?
It will function the way it is now. We no improvements, anything outside of the 200 feet or inside of 200.
Yeah.
So in other words, people can see the lights from the doors and walk to them?
Of course.
Yeah.
I just have one more comment, for the parking. The zoning board recently reviewed a parking, similar parking situation for a lot that wasn't the lot that had the, inn on it. And they're going to require an easement, so that's something that you may want to, be aware of.
In this case, the parking is actually on the same lot as the inn. But the access way is on a separate lot.
Okay, well, your parking says lot, 141 on this plan, so I just,
Yeah, the reference to 141 should have an arrow pointing to the right of way.
but.
Basically,
yeah,
141 is 2,972 square feet, it's this right of way and access. So
Right, so maybe you should update this
we
plan
can,
so it's clear.
we can fix that so it's clearer, yeah. But there already is an easement to use that access way to get to the lot, it's been used for years.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
When are we getting the landscape plan?
Hmm?
When are we getting the landscape plan?
That is.
That is it.
It's in the file as a single 11 by 17 sheet. It was supplemented about 2 weeks ago.
Somehow or other.
Like this, it could be in your box right now, I don't know if you've checked it.
I have, yep. I have not seen it.
And then you had the original one when they submitted the application.
Yeah, I have the original one, but I don't feel that I have that. Or if I had it, I missed it, so, well, maybe I do. Yeah, yeah. No, don't worry about it.
It's also emailed to everyone.
Yeah, I think I have it from the email, which is
I
easier to
think it
read
would
this
have
way.
been folded in half.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't see it.
Okay, here, can I pass this down? Here,
I think that's it.
Chris, this is what it looks like. There's Chris. Make sure it
Chris,
gets-
do you have it?
Gail's right.
I think it is.
Thanks. Well, then if one person has it, everyone has it.
Yes. Okay. I just wanted to make sure there was enough screening between the wall of the house that's being, apartment that's being built in Persephone, so that there is some privacy both for the people who are using it, that, and for the other business, so.
Absolutely.
You addressed that issue,
Yeah, we want the big one.
This is not either.
That's not it.
okay.
That's Alan.
Thank you.
Well, that's Alpert.
Yeah,
Oh, it's Alpert.
take a quick look and see if anybody has any questions. And, yeah, I looked at that as with the, yeah, okay.
The only change that I would point out is that the privet hedge is actually going to be left row.
Yeah, that's fine. Doesn't require as much trimming. Okay, any questions from the audience? Okay,
The next witness is Glenn Gardner from Newport Collaborative Architects.
Bill, could you
Mr. Gardner, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
What's your occupation, Glenn?
I'm an architect,
And how long have you practiced architecture?
43 years.
Where do you practice?
I practice in Newport in the New England region.
And what is the nature of your practice?
We're a regional practice that focuses on residential, hospitality, and commercial design with an emphasis on historic preservation and planning.
And did Lark engage you to propose renovations and additions to the Surfside?
Yes, they did.
And are those renovations and additions shown on your plan entitled Surfside, Block Island Beach House, AP number 6, lot 138, 439 Dodge Street, New Shore, Rhode Island, interior renovations and addition dated June 10th, 2022?
Yes,
And as a part of your design, did you present this to the New Shore Historic District Commission?
yes,
And did you ultimately receive a certificate of appropriateness for the design that you're presenting this evening?
yes, we did.
Referring to the plans in any way you think useful, can you please describe the project for the board?
I'd like to use this plan here that depicts the north side of the project because on the Dodge Street side, there's very little change or improvements that will be different. In this particular depiction, you see the existing building to the left, and then this one depicts the improvements shown on the right side. So the two main changes we're proposing are a large, not a large, but a dormer that's going to remove the existing open stair that you can see on the left-hand side with a enclosed stairway to meet code internally and extend maybe about 8 feet to the north. And then adjacent to that, you can see a small cottage that's going to be one guest room. And then the existing garage is converted to 2 guest rooms. So what you see is essentially what is there now, except for the 8-foot addition to the north and the small cottage between Persephone's and Surfside. It will be completely renovated to meet code and improvements made to meet today's requirements. We will have new siding, wood shingles, trim, and architectural asphalt grade shingle roof.
Would you please describe the interior portion of the construction of each of the buildings?
The main structure will house 12 guest rooms, 2 on the lower level, 4 on the first floor, 4 on the second, and 2 on the top floor. The cottage has 1 guest room, accessed off Dodge Street, and then the garage has 2 guest rooms.
In your opinion, is the hotel as expanded appropriate for this site?
Yes,
Are the buildings you have designed compatible with adjacent buildings in form, placement, and design?
correct.
Do you think they'll in fact improve the aesthetic of the existing building?
We believe it will. It'll be a good addition to the historic district.
Do the buildings relate harmoniously to the terrain and the existing buildings in their vicinity?
We took that into account. We reviewed and surveyed the area as part of our design process and scaled and material and textures and colors were reviewed and included in this design.
Are the scale, height, proportions, and design of the buildings proposed, including the roof style, facade openings, architectural style, and detailing, and building materials, visually and dimensionally compatible with the adjoining area?
We believe they enhance the Old Harbor Historic District.
Will the uses developed adversely affect the established physical and visual pattern of land use in its vicinity?
No.
Will it have any proposed negative effects on the island character or the characteristics of the neighborhood?
I do not believe.
Does the hotel, as expanded, to the extent possible, reduce dependency on individual motor vehicles for access by users?
We believe that most guests will be arriving by ferry, by plane or boat, and will use taxi, bicycle, scooter, or pedestrian to transport.
And as we discussed, the parking allocated to this property satisfies and in fact exceeds the requirements of the zoning ordinance, does it not?
Yes.
No further questions from Mr. Gardner.
Okay. Questions from the board? What about air conditioning?
Yes, we plan to,
You plan to use it?
yes. It'll,
Where are you going to locate the units? Compressors, whatever you call them. Thank you.
we have to get approval from the historic district on those, but presently, we're planning to probably locate them below this deck area, which should be away, screened from the neighbors.
Underneath the deck?
Yeah.
Any questions from the board?
Just with that in mind, are you aware of the noise that they make? I mean, you're sensitive to that and what you choose?
Yeah, I think we take that into account. We can baffle and hopefully with some landscape features would decrease some of that, yeah.
I just have one, zoning ordinance 407 hotel says individual accommodation shall not be less than 240 square feet, including closets but not bathrooms, and most of the rooms are below that.
Greg, Glenn, is it true that in the new buildings, in the side building and the rear building, you satisfy that requirement?
Yes.
And are you, and in the main hotel room, you do not, do you?
Correct.
But you are expanding the buildings as much as you can to come close to conforming to that?
Correct.
Right, but you don't have a hotel use right now on that lot, so you're applying for the hotel use and you're applying for something that's a new use, but it doesn't comply with 407. So I mean, it appears that it doesn't.
I believe we have existing 13 rooms at the moment, and our presumption was that those existing rooms satisfied that requirement.
Question for Bill.
I think that I think that you should address this 407 requirement.
Is
You're
that a question?
applying for a hotel now.
Our position is that we do have an existing hotel based on the minimum housing uses over the last several years and the historical usage. And we are slightly reducing the occupancy, expanding the building, the rooms as much as we possibly can, consistent with the requirements of the historic district. To make those 12 rooms 240 square feet, the building would have to be significantly larger. And that's our position.
Okay, but you don't have a zoning certificate or anything indicating that you have a prior to state non.
All we have is the minimum housing, finding usages of 27 beds for the last several years.
Okay, so I mean, the zoning board will have to decide that. That's definitely a concern.
So I understand the garage out back conforms,
The new,
and the new building next to it conforms.
accessory, the new.
But the existing
accessory
building,
Does
from
not.
what I understand, looks like the rooms are 130 square feet, not including the bathrooms.
hotel, say, right.
Essentially, the new construction and the new conforms,
Yep.
and the old does not.
And your presumption is because of the existing use, You're just
we're
basically
we're
renovating the
modifying the
existing use,
existing
okay.
use, but we're not increasing the number of hotel rooms.
And that's zoning?
Yeah, but we can flag that in our advisory.
Right, and
Yes.
probably should.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a concern.
We
There's
need to
no-
flag
it
that.
doesn't
We
make
need
a distinction between
Existing and the new.
structures versus
Yeah.
new units created,
Yeah.
and like the interior plans, how much reworking is there of the interior layout of the existing structure in regards to the wall configurations, and is it a total gut, or what's?
We're making improvements, but by and large, they're similar locations.
Yeah.
And you're also adding 2 additional rooms in the basement, so that, is that correct?
Correct.
And Chris, the, section 407 hotels in the zoning ordinance does address existing and new, and, but for number 8, for A2, it just is, should not be less than 240 square feet. So, I think that could become, problematic.
We will flag it in the zoning board. We'll have a chance to discuss that with you all again. Since that really is probably more their purview, we could make a recommendation, but they'll make the final decision on that.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
Isn't it planning board's purview, though, to approve an application for a hotel versus an inn? I'm confused as to what this application is at this point.
Well, you are recommending, you're doing 2 things. One is the development plan review portion of it, which is the separate application, that goes to the planning board with the checklist. And then you're also reviewing the zoning application, for the special use permit, and you're giving an advisory on that application. So exactly what I'm talking about with that application is
So,
before you.
so it would be appropriate in the advisory opinion to address that issue.
Yes.
It's all advisory. So your advisory goes to the zoning board.
So we're not approving an application
No,
for a
we're,
request for a
we're setting
hotel?
an advisory to the zoning board.
Okay.
And we can flag the water, we can flag the size of the rooms, we could flag anything that we feel that we want zoning to take a look at. Parking,
Identifying the.
yeah, we don't like the amount of shrubbery, we could flag that. Water retention, I mean, there's anything that we feel that needs to be looked at further, we can mention in the advisory. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, just quick for landscape.
Sure, go ahead.
Just be mindful not to use that invasiveness canvas.
Yeah, no, that came up as well, I should have
Oh,
pointed
good,
that out,
okay.
yep, no
I
miscampus.
saw that on the plan, but just be mindful of that.
Yep,
I know
I've
they're
heard
still
it's-
sold in nurseries and they say they're not.
Understood.
Thanks.
Okay.
I have Rich Cooper, just to explain briefly how this fits into to their plans for the Surfside and their other buildings.
Sure.
That's one question in regards,
To,
in regards to the compressors. for the
Sure.
AC.
okay, then we'll get Rich.
Is there a compressor? It looks like there's something mounted on the cottage in between the brickway, our brickway, Lazy Fish Persephone's, and the actual cottage, that there's a compressor unit there. Is that the case? And
I'm sorry?
on the side of the cottage, that's going to be the new cottage that's going to be built, erected, between Lazy Fish and the brickway, Persephone's brickway, there looks to be a bump out with a compressor unit or some sort of situation.
I'm not familiar with it.
Okay.
Sorry.
Is it your testimony, Glenn, that the compressors are going to be in fact installed under the deck at the back of that unit?
That's what our hope. Our hope is for it to be sufficiently screened and we'll give special consideration to sound attenuation.
Thank you.
Bill, could you swear Rich, please?
Phil, I don't know if you can hear you.
Bill, can you hear us? If you're,
Far away from the microphone, Joe.
Yes, I can.
okay, would you swear in Rich, please?
Could you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
Rich, please explain to the board your association with Lark Hotels and with 32 Dodge Street.
Sure. So I am one of the managing members, along with Rob Blood, of 32 Dodge Street, which is the LLC which owns the Surf and Surfside and the Gables. We have hired Lark Hotels, which my business partner Rob Blood owns. So essentially, I've hired Lark Hotels and Rob to run it, and we own it and we develop it. If that makes sense. I know it's a little confusing.
And can you explain how the proposal here relates to all your island-wide operations?
Sure. So we hired Glenn because of historic preservation. My career has just been developing with an eye towards historic preservation. We fell in love with the Surfside. It's a beautiful building, and we saw that it needed help, and the Surfside still does. So we renovated the Surf, and we renovated Gables. Our staff housing building is not a renovation, but it's almost complete, and so we want to turn our eye towards the Surfside, which has been a bit of an eyesore for many years on Dodge Street. We also want to move where our staff stay and get them off of Dodge Street as well. And yeah, so we're just looking to turn that. You know, when we purchased it, we were told it was a 13-room inn or hotel. I'm not sure what the difference is, but I'm sure you guys do know. So we were hoping to expand it, and we've reduced it now down to 15 rooms. And if we do have to just keep it 13 rooms, we will. But we're just looking to make it nicer and to make it better, to make it fit in with Dodge Street.
No further questions from Mr. Cooper.
Okay, anybody got questions? Okay, anybody from the audience have questions?
If you keep the public, just keep in mind, if you keep the public hearing open, you could discuss the parking, the revised parking plan. If you close it, then that's.
I thought we might leave the hearing open because we still have the water issues to hear back from you on after you do the meeting next, was it Monday you said?
17th, yeah.
Okay, well, if we hold this open, then you can bring that back to us along with the other information that we've asked for. And at that point, we can have anything else that you want to bring to us. So if that's not going to be a problem for your time frame, I think that might be useful for us because I really feel uncomfortable giving an advisory if we know you're not going to get the water allocation.
The issues I have are the water issue, the parking plan, the
Room size,
room size,
yeah, and
The parking including loading,
loading. area.
loading and parking,
water.
water, and I'd like to make sure, maybe that you know where you're going to put the air conditioning compressors, because I'm concerned a little bit about the noise, and obviously it would be screened from the street where you're locating it, but there would still be noise for the guests as well as for the surrounding businesses. So maybe a little more information on that would be appropriate. You need to do that anyway, so.
And we can continue this to your November meeting?
We can continue this to the November meeting. Absolutely. And we'll, our meeting is what date, Jen?
November 9th.
Okay.
So you would need to make a motion to continue it so that.
I will make a motion to continue it to 4 o'clock on November the 9th.
Thank you very much.
So can I just,
I need a second, and then you can, okay, you seconded, I knew that's what you wanted to do. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries.
just
Okay.
clarification, are we going to hear at the next meeting whether the room sizes comply or not?
They're not going to comply. You're going to hear our argument for why they don't have to comply.
Which is fine, because this is a historic building. But I think we also need to we'll also have a chance to hear from from Bill Landry to see what his side of the issue is, and any other information that you want to bring to us.
What I'm trying to say is it sounds like we still won't know if we can approve this project because of the room size issue, which won't be cleared up until zoning listens to it.
Yeah, we can prove it and condition, as we have in the past, on condition of.
Okay,
Right, you're
All
not
right.
just, but you're issuing an advisory to zoning.
okay.
And lately, the zoning board's been incorporating your advisory, your comments and your advisory into their decision.
Thanks.
Yes.
just ask for also, I think earlier on, folks asked about fire and rescue having a look at the building, and I wondered if that could happen in the meantime.
They have.
Oh, they did, okay.
There was a memo that was sent to fire, like the list of the different departments, and, I know they have the plans, and I haven't had any, comments.
Okay.
And I think the fire marshal's I spoke to someone from the fire marshal's office, so they're aware of it.
But haven't visited
They
the
haven't.
site that you're aware of, and haven't provided any comments or visited the site, but they have copies of the plan.
Okay, so if they have concerns, we certainly want to hear about them by next meeting. So that's good. Did anybody have any questions on the waivers that we had for the development plan review? We went over stuff last month, and I wanted to make sure everybody was comfortable with that. Okay. All right. Any other comments for Joe before we move on?
Good luck.
Thank you very much, appreciate your coming, and I enjoyed all the show and tell, it was very good. Okay. 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 All right. Okay, we'll let them get their stuff out of the way, and we are going on to our second hearing, which is numbers 3 and 4 on your agenda. Christopher Goyab, plat 19, lot 37, Champlin Road, public hearing for an application for development plan review for an application for a special use permit under Article 3, Section 306E, Article 4, Section 401 and 403, to demolish all existing structures and rebuild a secondary dwelling development.
Mark, did you want to just give them a second?
Yes.
So that.
They can get out, and then I'll make a motion to open the hearing.
That came from the
I think this, is this yours, Chris? Or theirs?
Jen gave it to me.
Jen's, okay.
Thanks, Jen.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Good evening.
Okay.
Again, I'm here for the Gorab application, and I think the best place to start is with Jen's memorandum of today. Has one thing which I think is erroneous, but it has a couple of things that aren't. I think Magnus Westergren, our architect, is here. You show that the building footprint of the main structure is 2,131 square feet, which we don't disagree with. But a significant portion of that is first floor decks, which are not included in the calculation under 406. The actual, but we put that down into the actual footprint of the building exclusive of first floor decks is 1,448 square feet.
Oh, okay.
So we comply there. And also on the gross area of the building, I didn't have it, it's 4,997 square feet. Mr. Westergren can testify to that, but so we satisfy that, which then brings us to the issues that you have on
Wait,
page.
wait, we can't, none of us can make the corrections on our papers. Come on back, Bill, unless you're recusing on this one. Okay, good.
My apologies.
Okay,
Okay, so building footprint.
okay. Building footprint is what?
Exclusive of first floor decks is 1,448 square feet.
1440,
So that's less than 2,000.
okay, 1448,
8.
okay.
And that's the main house. On the gross area of that, it's 4,997 square feet. You'll note that you're allowed up to 5,000. It was designed carefully. But so essentially, we don't get sucked into 406 for that. What Jen does point out on the second page is that we need to submit a radius map showing all lots within 500 feet of the property lines, which we haven't, and that we need to show view sheds from the properties, which we haven't. So I'd like to ask you to continue this until next month so we can address those as well and have a single hearing then.
Okay?
Okay.
Could we just, could we just go over some
Other issues that are identified.
If you have other issues,
Yeah, so
sure.
I was gonna say, that way we don't have to go into a third month. So, yes, let's start with staff and then we'll go to the board members. Okay.
the limit on the wall plane is 45 feet, and you're at 45 feet, so I'm just pointing that out, because you have no wiggle room on it.
We're aware of that.
That's
When-
something I'm a little bit concerned about.
And one thing I'd like to add,
The wall plane, the 45 feet of the maximum, so Jen's just raising, like, making sure that that is confirming that's 45 feet, sometimes time of development, it might be contingent that the surveyor measures that after.
Let me introduce the architect, Magnus Westwood.
may I chime in on this one, what they're talking about a little bit? That 45 feet, and you've got to take into consideration is, if you go from foundation corner to foundation corner, yeah, that's not it. I mean, you got to take into account for your trim boards and everything. It's the whole building plane.
And we understand that.
If you add that, it could be over, because you're measuring it, like, when I look at it, I'm looking at the foundation, it's 45 feet.
Yes, please, come on.
Yeah,
And I don't think we need to swear them since we're just working through details.
yeah.
Do we start from the beginning, or do we jump straight into this, material?
No, we'll address the questions she's
Bill,
got.
could you ask Bill Landry to just, are you opening the public hearing?
I have not opened the public hearing, so let me do,
I think we're addressing staff questions because we have some. I think our plan is to address them and then to come back next month with it addressed.
but I want to give them,
But if you could address the 45-foot issue.
yeah, I don't think we need to swear in because I really open the hearing next month.
Right.
Okay,
We know the 45 foot is the sacred dimension, and we definitely took it from the outside, the outermost perimeter of the exterior finished wall. So it's, we know 45 feet is a hard stop, and that's taken from the exterior of the walls. And then also a radius map, we did have a radius map on sheet, let me see where it is, sheet Z100.
Oh, I see.
There's a radius map that has, there's a 722 foot and a 1,000-foot radius. And then there's
I
a,
saw one that was the 200 feet, but I didn't see the 500.
That was the one that's sent for the abutters requirements, right. So we have the radius map.
I think those were the concerns right now.
Well, if we have the radius map, I think we can go forward.
do you have the radius map for the 500 feet?
Yeah, that was submitted with the abutters list, is that what?
I only found 200.
No, 200 was submitted with the abutters list because that's the notification
Yes.
requirement. But Magnus is saying that in his plans, there's a 500-foot radius map.
Well, I mean, we have a radius map there that just shows, we have 1,000 feet from the center of the property, 1,000-foot radius.
From the perimeter?
From the perimeter,
Yeah,
500
so I
feet.
don't think it's, I saw that too, and I don't think that's 500 feet.
Okay, so we can,
We can draw that, we'll make sure that, we'll continue like we're going, we'll make sure that is addressed.
Okay.
Okay.
And then, the other one is the, well, access, to the property, that's something that needs to be addressed, and then,
I will prepare a title report that shows the property that's been accessed by this existing roadway since time immemorial has a legal right to be accessed that way.
right, I just couldn't find any easements.
You wouldn't find it in the land records because the title goes back so far. I'll give you a title report.
actually,
Okay,
Jen, can I
and-
have one quick question on the radius map?
Sure.
Given the odd shape of the property, you know, the 500 foot from the corners of the property, right, there's a lot of different corners. So does that mean that there's going to be a lot of different circles of radius? Because right now, the 1,000-foot radius is 500 feet from basically the southeast and the southwest.
What you better
corners.
run is take the line and basically run parallel to the boundary line 500 feet, then go up to the corner and turn a circle, then run parallel. So you've got to be 500 feet away from the perimeter of the property all around.
And you have to
Got it,
show the
straight line.
structures, within the 500 feet of the property line.
And this plan actually has structures where they're located, but we'll incorporate those.
Okay, and then the other, note that I had was the pool that's shown on plans is not, I don't see it identified on the zoning application itself. And that's not something I noticed when you submitted it, I just noticed it when I was doing this review.
saying the one on the water side did not, was never constructed fully?
Yes.
That's your
That is
understanding?
my understanding.
Okay, now I
And
understand.
right now, there's basically no dwelling on the lot.
That has a CO.
Correct. So then that, could you make reference to the previous zoning decision allowing the detached multifamily in 2004? But that would be expired because I don't know if it was ever used.
And I assume they'd been built and were used. We'll look into that.
And then, the access, you're gonna address that. The, barn, on, like, near the guest house, it says that, I mean, there's floor plans, but I think you should just identify what the use is.
Identify barn as an accessory use?
And that there won't be any, living space, or if you are putting living space, it should be identified. 'Cause
Yeah,
I
there's
just
no,
didn't know what it was,
there's no proposal for living space.
like storage or whatever. The issue about that's something that we can talk to the solicitor about before the next meeting, is that 50 feet between.
Yeah, what happened, basically in 2004, there was no requirement for the houses to be separated, and so they were approved in these locations. There has been one case since that 50-foot was adopted where the board ultimately approved them more than 50 feet apart. It was the Frankie Smith property, which is a similarly sized property.
I looked at that one, but, you know, when you read this section, I think we need to look into that one.
I think we need to too, and in fact, that was raised by the zoning board chair when we went before the zoning board, so we're aware of that as an issue, and we'll be prepared to address it from our perspective. I'm assuming Mr. Landry will be prepared to address it from yours.
And especially since you only have the foundation. I mean, it's not like you have a dwelling there that's with a CO. The foundation, chances are, well, here they go
This is new to me. I was under the impression that there had been a building there, that it had been demolished fairly recently in a fire. But we will check into that as well.
Can I point something out about the secondary building that's shown on the plan?
This is Ken Cole, our project
I think he
engineer.
needs to come up to the
Come on up,
microphone.
No, we're not in here.
It's not a hearing, we'll swear you in next time
Okay,
around.
I'm Ken Cole with Atlas Land Surveying, I'm the project manager. As far as the two buildings that are out there, I have I have intimate knowledge of this property. I have not only been out there for Mr. Goria, but the previous owner, I believe the last name was Miller, they had me come out there to look at the property, and I want to say that was back in like 2006 or 7. And when I visited the site then, I think he was entertaining building the building that's there now. And I've been inside that house. Construction was completed on the exterior, the inside.
Which building, house are we talking?
The first building I'd be referring to is the building on the bluff.
Okay.
So a septic system was installed there, was conformed, but then the construction halted, and the exterior of the house is complete. The interior, I've been inside of it, it's just starts. Yeah.
That's what I said, it was a shell, but the other one is a.
Right, and the owner was living in the lower unit, the secondary, the one that's referred to as the secondary dwelling on our building. And it was habitable when I visited it, and a septic system was installed and used for a short period of time, and then the house fell into disarray, and I believe the fire department used it as a training purpose after the fact.
My point is that there's no dwelling there right
Right,
now.
I'm just stating what I'm familiar with on the site, and that it was recognized as someone was living there for a while, because the DEM, there was a septic system installed and conformed.
Sure, yeah, I could find a septic
Yeah,
information.
and there's actually a conformed septic on the Bluff house, just never got used, so it's brand new, waiting to be used.
So Jen, if the house, just because there's a foundation there in a home that had a CO, does that expire? The CO? Meaning, the CO has to be issued once a new construction happens, but I'm asking what,
One dwelling has no CO,
Right,
never
which
had
is
a
the
CO,
shell, right.
And then the other one had a CO at some point.
Okay,
But the owners.
right, there's no house there now, yeah.
So, like, that will, matter when you're looking at secondary dwelling development and the previous decision. Because if you had two single-family dwellings with COs right now, then that 50 feet that's required.
Yep.
Like, yeah, maybe that would be something that could be granted, but you don't even, you don't have two single-family dwellings with COs.
Okay.
Can I just make one note about the 50 feet? I mean, when we started looking at the property, it seemed like it's a beautiful site, and we didn't want to violate and disrupt the site in any way, and given that we had 2 septic fields and 2 foundations, it was just the obvious thing to build on those locations, especially given the septic and the foundation thing. And then also the fact that you can't really move the 2 buildings together because there's wetlands in between them, so that was another reason why.
So there are site issues
Okay,
why,
so
and
you-
we'll
you
address
need
those
to-
with you.
You gotta write something up for us for next month that says all this.
And
You can make the case for the.
You guys gonna say you need to make your case, because right now, looking at the maps, I would not have come up with some of the stuff that you're talking about, so.
we will address all those issues. So if you can continue us till
No, I
November.
just have one bit, so kind of backing up, just like the bigger picture here, as far as applying for a secondary dwelling, like that's not something that's common, right? We haven't seen that in many years, and like, the purpose, when you go to the zoning ordinance, the purpose is to really provide housing for, it seems like it's more of a zoning mechanism to provide, more attainable housing for New Shore families, and you look at the site plans and it's showing guest house, so what is I guess, why this section of the zoning ordinance?
If you go back, you've got to go back back to 1989. March 4th, 1989, when the town was considering increasing zoning from 2 acres to 3 acres. There was some concern about people who would have not quite 3 acres, not 6 acres, but would lose the ability to develop a second house on their property. This section, 403, was put there to allow the development without subdividing of 2 houses on a single lot with a special use permit. It was never and has never been used for affordable housing or for a restricted liability housing. It's always been allowed to be used just to create 2 houses on a single lot. Now, in this case, we have significantly more land than would be required to subdivide. And perhaps after this discussion, we'll go and just say, well, we're going to subdivide it, and it'll make it a much simpler case, and we can build some bigger houses. That's not what Mr. Goriev wants to do. So we're trying to continue this in a way that it's always been used before. This has never been an affordable housing or a year-round housing mechanism like other sections of the zoning ordinance. It basically allows people a different way to develop their properties.
And I just want to remind you that the planning board amended this ordinance
Yeah.
when it went from detached multifamily to secondary, and really changed some of those initial requirements and,
The biggest thing was the 50-foot issue, which there was concern about not wanting people to, because they can, condominiumize it and sell them separately. They've been able to.
That's what I remember.
The 50-foot requirement, putting them closer together, was thought that would discourage them from selling the property separately because they were so close to each other.
but this one could be condo.
But in this particular
Okay.
case, yeah, it could be condo, but I don't think they have the right-of-way width to subdivide. Is that?
The board, we can create the right-of-way width on our property, and the board has never, to my knowledge, required you to have the road leading into your property. So we could widen the existing road if we had to. We'd rather not. We like the road as it is. But all those things are possible. We're trying to avoid all of those by going through this route.
But don't,
I just want to point out that there's an abutter who has an attorney, Dylan Conley, who's on the Zoom, just in case anybody wants to know that.
And I just do have a question, because I thought that people appearing under the current rules had to appear in person.
They do.
So I would suggest, I know Dylan, and I would suggest that he come to the next hearing if he wants to be heard at the public hearing.
Right, and I allowed him to participate via Zoom because I forgot to let him know that he needed to be here.
Well, we're gonna,
That was my error, and it's
so we're gonna continue it so we can fix that. Yeah.
Yeah. And you saw the memo that Allison wrote, because she said you need a deeded right of way. There were a couple other things that she mentioned, so I want to make sure.
My title opinion will address the right-of-way issue.
Okay, so this is from October 5th. I just want to make sure that you were, that you did have a copy of that. And if not, I'm sure Allison will be glad to give you one.
No, Jen circulates that to us. We have it.
Okay, fine. And one thing I could not find, and maybe it's there and I just missed it, the layout of the guest house. I saw the basement and roof stuff, but I didn't see anything about how it was gonna be laid out, so.
It's in a separate, packet.
I
It's
may
a
have-
minute to find it too, so.
Okay, I may have missed it, as I said.
It's there and Magnus.
It's something that you normally include, so I figured it was my error and not yours.
Actually, I had this, it's not easy to find. I had the same question. It's there and Magnus will address it. at the
I want to
hearing.
see it next month. I don't care about it now. So that's fine. Okay, other people on the board, questions or comments? Claire?
Hey, Edmund.
And this might just be because I'm new, there might be a good answer for this, but under the submittal requirements for special use permit, number 11, you say that the natural conditions analysis is unobtainable. Why is that
Those
the
used to
case?
be provided by the Rhode Island Historical Preservation Society. Several years ago, they stopped providing them. So we can't get them. So we ask for a waiver and it gets routinely granted. And I keep saying, why don't you amend your form?
And that's a very good question.
Dear.
Okay.
No,
We'll get there.
It's a long list.
Well, we'll get there. Okay, other questions on the board? Okay.
I just quick question to the architect. So is this the deck that you're saying is less than, can you point to the deck that's being,
Which deck, sorry?
so on the
Oh,
main house?
the first floor
original
deck.
Footprint was 2,100 and something, and so you were saying that there was quite a bit of deck.
So this is, so the second floor, right, is the first floor on the west side of the property. So this area here, that's the deck on the, if you go to the next plan up,
So this is deck, but
on
there's
the upper level. Because it's ground floor on the upper, like that's the deck on the upper level.
upper level deck, because it goes.
And
over-
yeah, and then
okay.
this is ground floor deck here on that lower level.
Okay, so I'm just trying to figure out what we think, what do we calculate
So-
for 2,000?
So our
maximum?
1448 footprint,
Yeah.
right, is what you're seeing here.
Yeah,
That's the 1448.
I'm wondering if we have.
And then,
Yeah.
right, you have this deck on the first
Yeah.
floor, and then on the second floor, if you go to A102, which should be here.
But is the zoning ground level deck?
It says ground level and first floor decking is what it says.
We've talked about this before,
We
the
have,
first
yeah.
floor deck, so.
Right, 'cause
So
the house
it's a
is-
positive, it's
the house is on a steep slope, right, so on the waterfront side, when you walk out of the kitchen, you're walking straight out on the grass. So the deck that's there is,
So is the deck we're talking about essentially on the same level as the,
as the dwelling level.
so these two decks are on the same level?
No, this level is at lower level, this level is at upper level, but they're both.
So this is
at
lower,
ground
this
level.
is at grade.
Yeah, they're both at grade.
And it's less, I think, but
I think.
because it's a 50 feet issues,
I think
and
we'll
other
work
stuff,
through that.
we still have a lot of stuff to do.
Make sure we have all of
It's just trying to figure out the zoning regulation in regards to calculating.
I've always
That's
figured,
great. That's why the 50 feet's there.
I figured if
I
they're
think
at
it's something I
grade,
start, I want to.
then I would, my interpretation would be to exclude them if they're significantly above grade, they would, but you can work, Jen and Magnus can work that out with you.
Okay, anything else? Anything from the audience that, yes, Sam?
Yeah, and looking at the assessor's map, for this property, there, it's indicated that there's a conservation easement. You know what the nature of that is?
There is in the deed from Cindy Penny to, I forget who he deeded the property to. There is a restriction that no more than 2 dwelling units be constructed on this property for a period of 99 years. That's the only restriction that we found on the property. It's a deeded restriction. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, anything else? Okay, all right, we will next month. Do I need to make a motion to, but since this is not a continuation of a hearing?
Probably Bill, can,
I'd-
weigh in on this.
I'd like you to
Probably
make one, just to be
should-
sure.
Okay.
I think you might have to open it to continue it. Bill, if, I don't know if you can hear me, but.
Yeah, no, I can hear you, Jen. We can continue the application to next month without opening the public hearing. The public hearing, it's still a meeting, a duly noticed meeting. If it's continued, the application's continued to next month, the public hearing could be open next month.
Okay, so
As long as they don't have to re-advertise because everything's been legally noticed for the public hearing.
I mean, I could make a motion to.
Would you please?
Okay, I will do that. I will make a motion that the Christopher public hearing for an application for a development plan review be postponed to the next meeting, which is November 9th.
She said to
Okay, continued, fine.
That continued is understood. Yeah.
Second.
Okay, it's been seconded by Sosha. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll see you next month. Okay, Alan Roberta Alpert, number 5.
Didn't you want to move that to the,
Uh,
oh, you were switching 6 and 7.
Yeah, these two. Plat 5, lot 23, request for a Mylar to be signed off as the subdivision is not required. Good evening. Hi. And welcome. All right, just kind of walk us through this and point out anything you think we need to know.
Huh? Oh, I can't, explain it. I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I
Sorry, I
was-
was glad to repeat it again.
We submitted a Mylar.
Yes.
I'd like to see that it's accepted and it goes through. Everything is fine with it.
Okay. Our first question is Allison, do you have any questions or concerns? Allison is our town planner, by the way.
Right, so the planning board just needs to confirm that it's not a subdivision, just saying that your approval is not required. They're just reporting a survey. I mean, the only question mark that came up, this was on the, they had submitted this months ago.
Yeah, months ago, I remember.
We had someone that was, had hired an attorney and was appealing, was trying to stop this from being recorded. So that, and then they filed, it's kind of a long history here, but then they filed a survey to be recorded, and at that time, I think Bill had said, in order for that to record, there could be some note on the plan. That was the other one. This one, I'm not aware of any concerns. I mean, and again, we're not, by the planning board saying you can sign off on, recording this, it doesn't mean that we're attesting to the accuracy in any surveys, right? So,
Yeah.
I don't have any problem with the planning board.
Okay, fine.
Saying planning board approval not required, that's basically all you're saying, is that it's not a subdivision and it can be recorded with the town clerk.
Okay, anybody got questions? No. Okay,
Okay, so
all right, fine, then we will put this to be recorded.
Okay, fine.
Good, thank you very much for coming, and thank you for sitting through everything and waiting. I do appreciate your patience.
Peace and love.
Oh, good, well, I'm glad. Anyway, thanks a lot for coming and for your patience, it's appreciated. Okay, I'm going to jump down now to number 7, discussion regarding possible amendments to zoning ordinance section 518, accessory family dwelling units. You have a 2-page document on that, and I'll turn it over to Allison.
Okay, so this, when we were working on, if you recall last meeting, the section 513 zoning ordinance amendments we were working on, we had taken a look at the new state law in regards to accessory dwelling units. And Bill had brought up some potential amendments to 513, and then we started thinking through that a little bit more, and 518 was specific to the accessory family dwelling units, so this covered already what the state law requires of municipalities in regards to accessory dwelling units. The only current standard and language in here that didn't meet the updated state definition of accessory dwelling units was in regards to them having to be connected to that single family. And so this proposed language strikes that standard that the units, and now states that the units can be within accessory buildings. And there are some new, let's see, based on, I guess, our long conversations with accessory dwelling units for section 513, there was a couple added language and standards here in regards to, I noticed there was nothing in regards to density, so I incorporated that, a maximum of 2 dwelling units, accessory family dwelling unit, approved by the zoning official, because these are by right. So having the zoning official confirm that it satisfies the standards within the subsection and applicable with state code. And then the definitions I'm just showing you, but this is already before the town council for October's public hearing, but the accessory dwelling unit, instead of having, before it was accessory apartments, 513s, that was allowed for, general public. The accessory dwelling unit was the one that was restricted to family members. Now it's just one definition, but then within those sections, it explains the eligibility or the occupancy requirement within section 518. Because the distinction here is that they don't need to require dimensional standards. And what was the language? I did add in about water, given that discussion. That's kind of been more of a concern recently with allocations. So in addition to sewer, water. So any questions, thoughts? Yes.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
I'm confused. So with the 518, under C number 1, the standard is accessory family dwelling units and accessory buildings are prohibited. Is that still on the table, or is that no longer the case?
That standard C1 that is proposed to be eliminated, that's the main.
Okay, that's where I guess I have too many sections of all these different sections.
Okay.
So I'm wondering, because I had printed this one from a recent email, and it is 518, accessory
Yeah.
family dwelling unit, section C1. And it clearly says accessory family dwelling units and accessory buildings are prohibited.
Okay, so.
Is there another one I'm missing?
Well, October 4th, at the top of the page should be October 4th, 2022 draft for review.
Yeah, I don't have that one.
Okay, so that's the
I mean, I
one.
might have it in my pile, but I
Yes.
don't. Because I asked for revisions of this from the office between Corey and Jen, I think, and I thought this was the
Are there any
revision.
revisions shown on there?
Oh,
No.
I think you asked for the existing.
Asked
You
for-
said existing.
Well, I needed the revision so I could tell what we were changing.
Okay, I know I gave you what was existing, and then in all of your packet information and emailed and in your box is the draft amendment to 518.
And Gail, just for your information, the strikeouts are what was existing.
Right, and I don't have that, so I'm sorry, it's my fault.
That's okay.
But there's just far too many of these to,
Yeah.
for me, my brain is not.
So the process is we're going to approve this with changes or whatever we just choose to do. And then does this go to the town
Need an
council?
assistant.
Yes, this would also go
Okay.
to the town council for a public hearing.
I've got one other
All
quick
this
question.
stuff I
There
just
may be a
printed,
reason
I
for
don't
this
have
or not.
I don't have
Why was 62 picked? Is there required that be by state? Or
That's
could we
state
drop it
law.
down? Or could we
Yeah.
drop it to 60?
That's state law. Oh, I would think you could. It's not, the requirement is the 62, you could, but you also have, I mean, in this case, New Shoreham is very generous with accessory dwelling units, and you have another section, 513, that is very generous and allows anybody to occupy an accessory dwelling unit. Most communities don't allow that, so.
As I said, I personally would drop it to 60, but it's not something that I'm, going to be upset if we decide not to change it. I just wondered if it was a state requirement, then definitely leave it at 62. If it was not, we might talk about dropping it to 60, but, that was my only comment. Other than that, I thought it was pretty good. I liked it. Thank you for your work. I appreciate that.
Marcia, you're talking about 62 years old?
Yes, correct. Yeah, it's, what it says is the property owner's family who are 62 years of age or older, or who are disabled, or both. So I see where I am. I'm under a purpose.
The eligibility occupancy, yeah.
I
Does,
just thought,
does Bill have any comments? I guess I haven't.
No, I don't. You might remember that when we started out on the 513 amendments and tried to modify those to fit the new law, I had generated a draft that had two parts to it. One was going to try to fix 518 as to age 62 and older or with a disability to conform to the new state law. And the rest were going to be for people who were not necessarily age 62 or older. And the decision was made by the planning board, and which I think was a good idea, to avoid confusion and to leave 518 and tweak that as to age 62 and older, and then have 513 being a broader purpose, liberal accessory family dwelling units that's not limited to people 62 years of age or older. And so what the three changes, there's four, including the water, but the three significant changes to this section are all things that are either dictated or allowed by the state law. In two cases, it was required. The business about 2 dwelling units per lot is permitted. So it takes 518 as an age 62 and older or disabled provision, makes it conform to the state law, doesn't change the intent of that section. And I think it's just fine, separated out from 513 this way. One might ask, why do we have two separate sections? And part of it is because the legislature made a mistake the way they dealt with accessory family dwellings and the mandatory requirements. They tried to get rid of the 62 and over, but they didn't effectively. They changed it in one place, but not in the other place. So as long as it's not clear under state law that 62 years and older, is something that's really not even required to be mentioned, I think we ought to keep 518 in effect and keep 513 the way we proposed it, keep proposing that as a separate ordinance that speaks to a broader population. And 1 or 2 years down the road, when the legislature decides to pass a clean state law, maybe they can be combined at that time. But right now, it just makes it hard, as Gail has indicated, to keep all this stuff together. And it's probably better to have two sections like this, continue to have two sections like this for the time being.
Okay, so you think we should leave it at 62 and not change the age to 60?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think what Allison was trying to say is that if somebody's under 62, they've got a whole panoply of options under 513,
Okay,
under
fine.
under the proposed amendments to 513.
Okay, I'll go over on your side. That's fine. I'll leave it at 62. Thank you, Bill. Other comments or questions?
No.
Okay.
It's been a long process.
Yeah, well, we're getting there. Okay, do you need a motion on this, Allison?
If you send it to the town
Yes.
council, that it's consistent with comp plan and that, you
I make
have
a motion saying
favorable
exactly what Allison just
advisory.
said.
And I second exactly that.
Okay, favorable.
Okay, so Marley and Bill?
Yeah.
Thank
Okay, any further comments before we vote? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries. This will go on to the town council. Perfect. Okay.
And just a reminder that next Wednesday, the ninth, yes, next
Yeah,
Wednesday, the
right, a week.
19th is the 513 amendment that's, the public hearing.
Right.
Yes,
What
and I
time
would-
is that?
7, I
7
believe.
o'clock.
I'm not sure. If I see the agenda though, I will.
I thought it said 7, so we'll say temporarily, we think it's 7, but Jen will send us a reminder. And, because I'd like as many board members to come as possible, because I'm sure there will be lots and lots and lots of questions.
Yeah, and
I hope so, anyway.
in case, you might not get a reminder, so you might want to look at the town council agenda.
I'll try to remember to send a reminder.
Okay,
I'll send you guys a reminder when I see the agenda. I'll make myself a note.
19.
The 19th. I sent
Reminder.
it a couple times.
Yeah, it's already on my calendar.
It's on my calendar too, but I will send a reminder either over the weekend or whenever we finally see that agenda. No problem. Okay. Last thing on the agenda for today is the amendments to zoning regarding regulations related to the size and massing of residential structures. Discussion of possible amendments to the zoning ordinance. Articles 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I won't read them all.
What is it?
We'll start with Article 1, which is Section 11, General Prohibitions. And again, I'll turn it over to Allison. And I invited Sam to come and join us since he was around when we did some of the original stuff. And being an architect, he can visualize roof lines and other assorted things that we need to know. And thank you very
Okay,
much
it
for coming,
should-
Sam.
should
Since
be,
he was operated on, you can see he's still wearing.
255 1902.
All right, Allison, thank
And
you.
a second
Okay,
one
so
I've
we
got, I
have-
think it
I
rings
know
to
we've talked about this
John's
quite a bit.
cell phone is 226-3057.
I can't hear Bill. I don't know what he said.
He's having a conversation.
It was somebody else, maybe?
Okay.
I can't see either, so.
So I think we've been talking about this for so long that maybe we forgot our original intent, and it's evolved, I guess, what
Yeah, we'll
sections
just double
or
check.
regulations within these sections that the planning board is looking to modify. And I think we've had some trouble building consensus, like as far as direction as to where the planning board wants to go with the amendments. So one area that seemed to be a consensus was in regards to that maximum allowing for
Those are the
more
right numbers,
leniency
Joe.
in regards to like lower level building, like one single level homes, and not being so restrictive for them in regards to footprint or maybe building plane or wall plane. So that's where some potential amendments were drafted, because I thought there was some consensus there.
I have a question about
Yep.
that. Can I ask it now?
Yeah, sure.
If we allow, sweetie pie, if we allow people to broaden their footprint because they wish to build with a single story so as not to obstruct the view sheds, if you double since you're doubling the footprint, does that automatically double everything else, like gross area, building volume?
I don't think you're doubling
Well,
the
we're,
footprint, though.
yeah, why doubling?
We're just saying, so if I remember right, it was, the suggestion was made to allow the footprint or livable area to go higher if the building height went down. 25 feet was the threshold, not, what is it now, 32?
32.
Is
So-
25 feet a
So,
single
so
story?
32 feet is the threshold now, right? You can build a building 32, and I don't know why 25 came into effect, but 25, if someone wanted to build something at 25 feet, why not allow them to have a bit more livable area?
Was that 28, right?
That's, I think it was, I mean, it's right here.
What is a single story height?
I was sort of able to reverse engineer how, in reading this, I kind of got to the same place that you guys were as well, particularly that when you start to look at the maximum living area square footage, and then look at the maximum volumes, you wind up, in a scenario where, if you look at the footprint, you don't have enough footprint to get close to the maximum volume. Or am I saying that backwards?
Yes,
No.
like you're encouraging,
Yeah,
higher,
basically,
taller
you're
buildings.
basically imposing
Yeah.
in a backwards kind of way, another limitation on the area, on the living area, if in fact you wanted all that living area to be on one floor.
Wouldn't necessarily be on one floor, though, if you're allowed 25 feet.
Yeah, but
No, but I guess what I'm saying is I was looking at, this is a little unrelated to where that started, but this is sort of how I backed into it, was, I said, okay, if you've got an allowable footprint of 3,500, theoretically, you would be allowed to do 3,500 square feet all on one floor. But in fact, you can't because, without a special use permit, because you're limited to 2,000 square feet. The trigger for going for a special use permit is 2,000 square feet, as opposed to the 3,500. So, it becomes a scenario where you could build a building with a less than 2,000 square foot footprint. And you could go up 2 stories and you could have 3,500 square feet of living space. But you can't build 3,500 square feet of living space all on one floor without triggering an SUP.
Yeah.
That's kind of what jumped out at me when I first looked at this. Now, what you're saying, then the other thing that I couldn't quite get my head around was the provision they had in this draft, where you're saying, if the wall plane can be exceeded, the 75-foot wall plane can be exceeded. I wasn't quite sure exactly where.
I'm not sure why those were removed in the first place. We put them in to solve problems that we had with several larger homes in the area.
75 feet is a pretty generous wall.
Yeah, so I have excuse me, I have questions to talk about why we want to remove them, and probably we want to put it back in, so.
Right, that was my second comment. The question for me goes back to Chris, is if you build a 1-story building, how high is that? Give me a number.
Depends on the roof pitch, but you can figure about, I usually figure about 10 feet, 10 or 11 feet to the top of the wall.
Yeah.
Where the roof rafter goes up.
Yeah.
We're requiring a minimum 7 and 12 pitch.
Right.
Yeah.
So then it becomes a geometry exercise to how wide the building is, that determines how far up. So the roof pitch and how wide the building is determines where the ridge is going to be.
See, I see it being more complicated to solve, even though the issue is simple. We want people to have the opportunity to broaden their footprint by lowering the roof to avoid being unsightly, or to put it bluntly.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that aesthetically that isn't going to backfire. I mean.
Yeah, we do worry about unintended consequences.
Because a very long, but even a low, but very long building is perhaps more of an imposition on the landscape than a confined, vertical building.
But it depends on that depends on the lot too, of course.
I'm sorry?
Think of the Stringfellow house on Spring Street. That's a very long, low ranch. I don't know how long it is. Probably not 75 feet, but as you come up Spring Street, you see that building. It looks like kind of
Well, and pardon my interjection, but didn't we just approve over 3,500 feet with a 27-foot, 11-inch roof? I mean, height
For what?
for Coast Guard Road?
Oh,
And-
oh,
Yeah, and without the 27-foot height, I don't know if they could have fit the dormers in, which then give it character, and the roof pitch was, I don't know what the roof pitches were offhand, but, and they had 4 acres, so that drifts back to percentages for me and acreage and siting, you know, because I think you're absolutely right, with long, low-lying properties, buildings, you run in risk of it looking institutional, good word, but it depends on the site and the acreage, and.
Exactly.
I would differ on that, and I guess after spending a lot of time going through this, I've kind of came to the conclusion that, my sense is that I'll call it the two-step that we've been doing, you know, where you get to do this without the SUP, and then you get to do more with the SUP. And I'd be interested to hear how you guys agree or disagree. I think that's run its course on the island. I think my sense is that, in the immortal words of Thoreau, it's time to simplify and just element and impose it.
The SUP,
I don't care if you got 45 acres or you got half an acre, just put a limit on there and just live with it.
So the SUP, I agree with that part of it, having, like, the SUP is now the mechanism to get whatever you want, in a sense. But I also have a problem with, so we just heard, you know, like, looking at the Goryeb, and it was brought up. It's a very modest dwelling where an existing shell is, and it's actually, in my, more tasteful than going up 35 feet, which they're not. They're building into the side of the hill, and they want a secondary dwelling. But if they can't get that, and they can subdivide, they will.
They can't subdivide.
But I'm saying hypothetically, like, this is like, the subdivision part is my problem with all of this, because if, what do you wanna see? Do you wanna see smaller houses on larger properties, or do you wanna see bigger houses on smaller properties? And I think the way some of this is written is it encourages, you know, if I have 6 acres and I wanna do X, Y, and Z, and I have to go to special use permit, you say no, but I can do it if I subdivide. And I know you can't, there's no silver bullet for everything,
Well,
but.
no, you can't. You can't do it if you subdivide. These still apply, regardless of lot size.
But the chart that we had a it was, and I think I brought it up, I can't find it right now, but it had 3,500 maximum for a lot.
Yeah, Chris, these charts.
I haven't had any, I mean, to the best of my knowledge, I haven't had any property owners subdivide because of this ordinance.
Right.
I've had,
Well, it's been far more gracious than it is right now. It's more restrictive than it has been.
This
Well,
kind of my
it's
point,
been-
getting
it's-
more restrictive is, I
right,
don't
so
wanna see
it's
the
more
unintended
restrictive,
consequences of that.
like you reduced some of those.
The prohibited, so
Prohibited.
nothing, the special use permit maximums didn't change, just the absolute, the prohibited level for a footprint. So instead of 5,000 square foot footprint, it went down to 3,500 square foot footprint and a living area maximum, like the prohibited levels went down slightly.
But that's what someone said to me the other day when we were discussing all this. They said, well, would you rather me build, and this was someone who already owns property, they already own a house, if they should ever change their property. So would you rather me put 2,000 square foot houses on my property? Because they have the acreage. But, you know, and they're trying to figure out, if I can't put a 4,500 square foot house on the property, I'll put 2,000 square foot houses on the property, and maybe I'll put a third accessory structure and then a small outbuilding. I mean, I guess the biggest question was, what is the goal? What is our goal?
Well, in some case, that was one of the goals originally, was to break up that massing. So
Yes,
actually, that actually was what was favored and may still be, that there be accessory dwellings.
Right.
The others are down to what, 20?
They're down to 25,
28 or 20? 25? Okay.
That's
I-
true.
I just feel as though that the house should be to match the size of the property you have. You know what I mean? So I think you brought this up originally when I first got on board, Sam, was the more acreage you have, like, say you start off at the 3,500 at like, what is it, 3 acres or something?
You're allowed
Well,
30
anyway,
minimum
just
zone,
like-
yeah,
2.75.
Yeah,
Can I just?
but if you have an extra acre, then maybe you can get,
Sorry.
then maybe you get 500 more square feet.
There's a plus
And then if you get, like, if you have more acreage after that, then you get another 500, up to a cap of maybe 5,000. So if you have a certain, so the house fits the size of the property, you know? So we just don't have all this subdividing, a bunch of small houses everywhere, you know? So I think, you know, if you have the property, you should be able to use it. And it's not affecting anybody, because it's, you know, you got plenty of property, you're not
Yeah.
affecting people's views, and, I mean.
And that's one approach we did, there seemed to be a consensus of the board at one point during these
Yeah.
discussions that.
We've had a lot of
let's do,
discussions.
Like, have something like that, like, you can build a larger house if you have a larger lot, like,
Yeah.
so there'd be multiple
Yeah.
levels. The one thing I raised when drafting that, and I did start coming up with some language for that, it got so complicated because the town has multiple, so in a lot of communities, there's one measurement there's one, here there's footprint, floor area, gross area, building volume. So all of those then would have to be.
Yes.
Like, so you'd have about 50 different numbers within the regulations for those maximums. So I think a lot of the feedback is that it's overly complicated for
Yeah.
applicants, for.
And that's not just from board members, that's from builders and architects and everyone who has to face this.
If you want
So
to
you'll
move
need-
toward that, I would say you would need to probably select one dimension, like, to have
Yeah.
that, like, because otherwise,
You need a manual to read the manual.
We don't
Well,
want,
I mean, just one unintended consequence would be that, let's say you had a sliding scale of lot sizes. So if you had 4 acres, you get to do something more. You get to do something bigger. But would there be a provision in there that as soon as you did something more, you were then forever prohibited from subdividing?
yes, we would.
Yes.
Do
Yeah,
something.
that was part of
Yeah,
it.
that was part of
So,
it.
okay, so you would have to,
'Cause
so
we've
then
had-
that's another layer that you would have to build in.
Right, we did discuss
Where
that.
we've done this, under a special use permit, we have put in the requirement that they were not able to subdivide, or it had to be the land had to be put into conservation.
Okay, so then at that point, an owner thinking strategically has to say, where am I? I'm in my dotage and, the reaper's knocking at the door and I've got 2 kids, do I want to subdivide this and give them each a lot? Or do I want to give them 1 lot and let them fight over it for the rest of their lives? Or, or all those considerations would come into play. But I would agree, I guess, that if you can throw them some size or scale breadcrumbs that make it more appealing to not subdivide, then maybe that is desirable. But man, it's going to be a really complicated ordinance.
It already is complicated.
Well, it is.
To be more complicated would require more staffing, because at this point, it's taking,
You have to explain this to everybody.
I have to explain this to everyone, the architects are interpreting it in various ways, and you're seeing some of it on the applications, but it isn't one application a year. Like 3 years ago, I think Mark had only seen 3.
Yeah.
And now, I'm getting 1 a month, because they're all right below the threshold. And then it's additions or modifications to existing structures that you wouldn't
roof style, like dormer, like what's building volume in there for?
I thought it was for sneaking in a third floor somewhere.
Well, I think the building volume and one of the things,
And just so I can just make a point though, that's for, who's gonna check that on our end?
Oh, I'm not.
That's-
It's up to the architect
You-
to fill out the form and sign it
Yeah.
with his information on it.
But then the house gets built,
And
and
then,
who
Can't
checks
even
it?
begin to figure
As it
out
gets
why.
built, it gets checked.
By who?
Nobody.
building official.
No,
The building official,
no.
Just getting back to just quickly on the 3,500 feet, I talked to a gal today who has a house here, they grew up here, her husband's from here, they raised 5 kids here. She said, you have 5 children, try to live with 5 children in 3,500 square feet. Their house is 46 and change, I just looked it up. 4536 is their total gross area with decks and whatnot, first floor decks. So, and she said it was great, it was comfortable for them. They wouldn't want more than that, but they certainly wouldn't have wanted less than that. And how do you?
You use two.
But the
terms.
decks are excluded.
Oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't use the word gross area because I don't know how to define that, and it's not on vision appraisal, but, no, I'm talking about footprint.
Okay.
But actually, that's not footprint, that's their first floor, second floor, and deck. It comes out to 4,000, 4,100.
So you'd have to back out the deck.
So,
'cause the deck
so that
doesn't-
3,500 square foot gross living area affects a lot of people who already have houses here. And whether, granted, they wouldn't be expanding those or, I guess the point was, if I were to move here, or I already lived here and I bought a house, I wouldn't be able to build that today, because she doesn't feel like she's swimming in a really big house. Because now there's grandkids and kids and family members coming to stay. I guess
Well,
my
that's where
point
you
is
go
the
with it.
35 is small.
yeah, where you go to a guest house or something along that line. If you have the property, if you don't have the property, then, acreage, then of course you
And
can't.
I'm sorry, I'm pointing out the wrong point, part too. It's the 3,500 is footprint. What was one of the?
You were talking about gross living area or floor?
Living floor area. So
That's
we limit it to
4,500.
3,300. Yeah, but they're talking about limiting it to 3,300.
It's 4,500 right now.
No, special use, 33 to 45. The maximum is. Prohibited is above
Would be 45. And
Above
they're at
45.
46.
So they're.
Whatever, they're close.
I would suggest what you do, and you don't have to listen to me because I'm just John
But we
from
wanna
public
listen
here.
to you.
But I would suggest what you do is you get the Christmas tree first and then start hanging the ornaments on it rather than picking out the ornaments and
I don't get the
then getting the
analogy,
tree.
but
Well, your point is you're trying to figure out what's a manageable size house. I wouldn't
Right.
start there. I would say, how do we want to structure the controls that we want to impose on house sizes altogether? Forget about what the numbers are for those house sizes, but just look at the system, design the system of controls. So do you just want to have like just one maximum for square footage of houses and one maximum for footprint and one maximum for height? That would be pretty simple. And then do you want to have like the two-step process that we've got now where you say, okay, if somebody has a special situation, they can get a special use permit, provided they go through our meat grinder of an approval process, which is what we've got now. I would advocate, and again, it's just my opinion, you guys need to make up your mind, but I would advocate that now is a good time to abandon that, because I don't think it's been working well. I think it puts a real burden on the staff. I think it's really complicated for the applicants. I think there's a lot of, anytime you draft one of these deals, the market forces here, and Gail, you know this way better than I do, everybody wants to toe the line. I want to max out my lot.
Yeah.
I mean, you can sum it up that, any other way you want, but that's, I mean, I'm probably the weird anomaly. I've got 6.5 acres and build a 2,000 square foot house. But everybody else wants to max out their property.
Not everyone, but probably 80%.
Okay, so close enough to everyone to be
I mean,
effectively
I'm
everyone.
guessing on the
And,
percentage, but
and
not
they're just
everyone.
doing it because they can't afford that last 20%. In 10 years, they'll add it
Well,
up.
everyone wants to maximize on their investment, is the
Right.
bottom line.
Right.
And I wanted to have us make sure we're protecting Block Island. I keep throwing that out
Right.
periodically.
Exactly.
Because once you have these huge houses, they're gonna be there for the next 150 years. So we need to look at how we can protect the island.
And I think with
Keep the view sheds and these lovely, iconic little neighborhoods. Those are the things which are attracting people to the island, and we don't wanna lose them.
But
I
you-
think,
you-
I think we'd all agree that divvying the island up into as many 3-acre lots as you possibly could and putting the maximum size house on each one is not the desired result.
No.
I think that's
But-
the direction we're going with how we're writing this.
Yeah,
And we need to
exactly.
change that.
Right, right.
That's my feeling on it. That's,
I
I think
agree.
So
that's the
you, so
direction.
you're not getting into changing the 3-acre part at this point.
No.
That's a whole other can of worms. But you are getting into what is the maximum size house. And right now, we've got this 2-step process, which I still believe is way too convoluted. And ultimately, it's not really a 2-step process. It just takes everybody 2 steps to get to the same place.
And-
Because rarely does anybody get shut down for going up to the second limit.
Can I ask,
Well,
We
Can
have no mechanism to shut them down. It becomes a Rick Man's.
Well, theoretically, you do. The zoning
We
board,
have- there
the
have
zoning
been
board can
several.
say no to the special use permit, or we can say no to the
Well, there's a
special use
case with a
permit.
no on the
But,
table, but.
but then you get sued, then you get appeals, then you get challenges,
Can I
because
ask-
it's worth it to go after.
Joe and Allison, what would make this easier?
Oh, well,
Because that's kind of where I was going with the volume question. I don't understand that, like, I can't wrap my head around, what was that volume put in there to mitigate? But then it's like, it's like passing an ordinance, it's never gonna get enforced. Who's gonna calculate the volume and check it and know,
a couple things that would make it easier would be requiring a Rhode Island licensed architect to stamp the plans, fill out the form, sign it, so you know that a professional kind of looked at all of the documents. Another part of it would be I mean, if it could be simplified a little bit, I mean, that would be helpful for, I think, the public to understand what it says. I've had a number of calls of like potential homeowners who would like to buy property on the island, but they can't figure out what the section says. And even like if someone comes in to go to CRMC and I have to sign a form saying that it conforms to the zoning ordinance, but I have to do a full review and make sure it complies with this large house ordinance, and that is a completely separate thing that not every homeowner really is like anticipating when they have to go to CRMC. I think simplifying it as far as like the volume,
structural
I'm trying to
dimensions.
figure out what you want. Is it the long house, the height, like what are you trying to, what's your goal? What are you trying to achieve by
And I
having
guess
this ordinance?
the other question is about design, and I know, it's hard to regulate. I think a lot of us probably agree what looks good and fits in the landscape, but it's hard to craft that in a zoning ordinance, and there's some subsections, some standards in here that get to the design, like, right, the roof pitch, the style of the roof, the decks, like specifics on the decks, specifics on.
No, but that's not really, I mean, if they're under a threshold, we're not.
Those are.
Well, they're still subject, if they're under the threshold, they're still subject to wall plane and building plane and all that
Yes.
stuff.
And which
Roof
we need to
pitch.
put back in.
And
a
right?
com-
They're
yeah.
not like that Victorian or cottage architecture that there's lots of breaks in the wall plane. You're not seeing that. And so what does the planning board still want to try to control some of the design that the
Yes, we do,
architects are coming
absolutely.
in with? Not the size. But
You're
and
going,
are those standards still correct for today's, like?
you're going to open a real can of worms if you try to do that. It's an almost impossible task because it becomes very quickly subjective. It's really difficult having sat on another historic districts commission for many years. Even having historical precedents and stuff to be your guidelines, it's really difficult to do even then. To have nothing as your guidelines. I mean, look at some of the houses that you've got that are very unconventional here. You've got, you know, the engine house down by Cat Rock Road. You've got the house over by the Painted Rock, you know. That's,
Yes.
you know,
Yes. You mean the roof
you know,
sticking
I
out of the
mean,
ground?
I mean, even Dave and Lucinda Morrison's house, you know, is kind of unconventional. I mean, you know, you go down that road,
No, I think what we're talking about
Really
is just keeping them from making some very major mistakes. And we did that by the wall plane and the building plane. That helps the architect focus on making sure that there is some breaks in the design. So it isn't just one big, long, blank wall. So,
But we have to always, I think we have to always consider the topography here varies so
yes.
greatly.
That's why I like a
The
special use
siting
permit, because
varies
we
so
could look
greatly.
at the terrain, we could look at the view shed, we could look at
Right.
the neighborhood. All of those things help us then in making a decision on yes or no, whether or not something goes forward. That's why I like a special use permit.
I agree, Margie, on that. Part I don't like.
but the problem is, do you ever realistically deny stuff?
Well,
we did.
many times, yes, we have denied, and many times people, after listening to us talk for a little while, redesign stuff on their own, so.
Yeah, or they go back and they lawyer up and sue you.
Yeah. We have had very little of that, actually.
Yeah.
No, which isn't to say we won't have it in the future, because we know we're in a more litigious society than we used to be.
I don't know, and I mean, Gail, to your point, the topography varies, but everybody wants to be the cherry on top of the sundae.
But not necessarily, because even the few applications we've seen recently, they're like the 27, under 28-foot roof pitch. I mean, height on, not roof pitch, the 27-foot height of the house, that's less than 32, which they're able to go to 32 and they didn't. And this application we're about to hear, they're at 1911. That's far below the 32, but they're stretching out a bit. And this one is even stretching out beyond. The others have stretched beyond, but they're taking heed to that. So I think it's important that we're considering that factor and not forcing them to go high. If we'd said, nope, sorry, you've got to stick with 2,000, they would have gone 3-story. Because why wouldn't you? If you want to accommodate your family and your friends and your guests and your lifestyle, your summer lifestyle, that's what people want today. And so why force them to build something obtrusive, for lack of a better word, when they can be low-lying and sprawled across the property, especially when they have almost 5 acres. If they have 2 acres, it's a different story, but when you have 5.
But I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that's what people want.
Yeah.
And I think what you guys are now, and the island is now in the hard, difficult position of saying, I'm sorry, you can't necessarily have what you want. And that's the real reality. That's where we are. And you guys are gonna be the Grinches.
The other element that you see now more, and there's a few plans, I mean, I haven't been here that long, but every plan that I've seen for larger homes includes, a pool house, a lot of hardscape, no offense, like, a lot of hardscaping,
Which we made-
so it's
Accessory building
not
and a
just
pool house.
a house and a driveway with a deck, now it's a house, a driveway, hardscaping to the pool, with a pool house, you know, it's become more sprawling.
You forgot the amphitheater.
Yeah.
And the garage with the apartment.
You got a garage with an
but-
apartment over it, baby.
So, you know, that's, I think, the trend that we're seeing now. Not that, you know, not to mitigate any of that. Again, just the unintended consequence of forcing everybody to go too high, I think, to the 35, and you know, I don't know if entertaining just. 32, I'm sorry.
32, I don't want it to
I
get
mean,
out.
I read a report from 1970 that recommended that the zoning or building on the island should not be at the highest point of property, should be mitigated to a height, 10 feet above, or 10 feet above the highest point of the property, but it never went into effect.
No.
And after I read that, I started looking around, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of pieces of houses built on the highest point of the property.
That's the cherry on the
That's the
sundae.
cherry of it.
And
Well, one thing I also feel, and I'm pretty strong about it, is I don't think it's fair that, now that some people, before these changes, they got their big house, and now we're gonna be the ones saying, hey, you know what, you can't do what we did, too bad you missed the bus. That's not fair to those people.
No, you're absolutely right about that.
Yeah.
But there may be no way around that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know as well as I do, what's a Block Island conservationist, right?
Yeah.
Somebody who's already built their house.
Yeah, now I got mine, now no more building. It's just like that's.
Everybody wants to be the last one
question
here
is what
and
is
pull up the ladder
I think
behind
what
them.
we need to
So
find is
that's-
what's
that's
reasonable
the
that
two
people can live with.
It's the two things I think about, is it's not fair,
Yeah.
to the people that now have finally worked themselves up in life, where they got enough ability to build a big home, and, oh, guess what, you missed the bus. Yeah, too bad. And then the other item is we're pushing towards what, the subdivides and a bunch of smaller houses by reducing the square footage. So those are the two things that are, I think are the negative aspects of reducing our square footage.
in some
I
respects,
don't,
it's
I don't,
objective,
I don't
you
know if I
yeah.
have a solution for
There
the
isn't.
fairness issue. I mean, if you step back and put aside the details and just look at the big picture, and you say, okay, as I would advocate for, that it's time to tighten up the controls. However it is that you do that, you're gonna have a raft of people who are gonna say, phew, I just got in under the wire.
Yes.
And that's, there's nothing you can really do about that. And is it fair? No, I agree with you, it's not fair. But what would be fair would be just to keep controls in place that allow the quality of the island overall to slowly degrade, and then everybody loses. I don't think that's necessarily fair. Or to gradually ratchet up the controls stricter and stricter so that you get a whole small incremental changes. Then you've got people trying to hit a moving target. And each time, people watch what's going on and they keep their ear to the ground. So each time, like what we're doing right here tonight, I'm sure there's people, who are going to say, wow, last night the planning board was talking about cranking up the
Yeah, well, we've
controls.
been talking
I
about
better
this
get
for a
my
year and a
building
half,
permit
2
in now,
years. Yeah.
I think that's why Jen's probably seeing so many so fast.
There you go.
Because they're
There you
afraid
go.
that, hey, I gotta do it now, or I'm not gonna be able to. So that's probably what's causing the influx of these permits coming in, to be
And
honest.
that may just be the nature of the beast, and
I
there
think,
may not be
a lot
anything you
has
can
to
do
with,
about it.
People having been here for several years of COVID and
Yeah.
decided that they need this, and this done to their house.
Overall, I think most of the applicants have been great with providing the information and filling out the new form prior to applying for the building permit and communicating with me when I have questions. It's just a pretty lengthy review to make sure that they comply with that ordinance. And if we were just looking at lot coverage and setbacks, that's easy compared to
Yeah.
what we're doing. And a lot of, the feedback I'm getting is, well, there aren't any other towns in Rhode Island that have anything like this.
most towns in Rhode Island don't have the problems we have too.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they're not an island.
I actually kind of know it's happening because I've had people approach me saying, hey, I want to get a foundation in before they change the laws, so.
So I guess
Sure. That's human nature.
You know, so I know it's happening.
Oh, yeah. It doesn't surprise me at all.
Is anyone proposing more restrictive than what currently is on? So I don't know what, I don't think that's what we've been talking about.
No.
So, I don't hear the planning board saying it's gonna be more restrictive, so if the.
Well, this is more restrictive.
Regulations have been in place for over a decade.
freezing.
The amendment, what is, why the planning board is discussing this is because a couple years ago now, I don't know, how long ago, a year plus, forget, the planning board decided, and there was a public hearing, the town council adopted reduced prohibited levels, so nothing changed in a couple of the sections related to special use permit, nothing has changed in over a decade. The prohibited level of, 5,000 square foot footprint was reduced to 3,500 square
Right,
feet.
so that's restricted.
And
That's
the-
more restrictive, right?
But that's been in place for a couple of years.
I know, but
Yeah.
it's on trial, there's a sunset clause,
Right,
right?
well, so that's not, so I'm.
That, one of the things we have to
Right.
decide shortly is whether or not we're gonna have to ask for an extension, or can we complete this in time?
The cubic feet, I mean, the building volume, and then the living floor area, there was a new maximum of 4,500 square feet. So, and those will sunset in a few months unless the town council takes action. So I don't know why I guess I don't understand the rushing right now. Right now, it's more restrictive than it was a couple of years ago, and we're not intending to make it more restrictive. If anything, those sunsets goes away, it'll be bigger, so I don't
Can't find
understand
my
the
graphic.
rush now. 'Cause
Well,
I don't understand what you mean, though. There are a couple of those sections that are more restrictive. Am I not?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they've been in existence though for 2 years.
Yeah.
But we're asking for a few hundred feet less in a couple categories. We're not.
We're
Well-
deciding on whether or not to keep what's the
Which is-
restrictive
whether we
now,
keep it now
or
or-
going back to the original.
No, or changing it, we're not necessarily going back to the original, but
Well, the sunset.
That's what I'm referring to. We're talking about changing it, yeah.
we were talking about
I
changing
hear
it.
you.
But if we could make it more restrictive, we could make it less restrictive.
I know it's.
We probably will not go back to where we were before because we knew that was wrong. It
And that
didn't
might
work.
be like a starting point, just to see, just to move forward, is to kind of get a consensus on, do you want it to go back to what it was?
No.
But
So
that's.
it'd be helpful to know.
But that's you,
From
I mean,
everyone,
like, I'm looking
right?
at this, I'm like, what's
You're
the?
not going back to 7,000 square feet.
It was
5,000.
5.
No, the original one was much higher than that.
No, it
This
wasn't.
is.
I'm talking about
was
what,
all
that was
percentage.
before this went into effect.
No, it isn't, it's 5. This is
five.
from two,
Yes.
this is the current limit and then
5,000.
what it was before. Like,
Here they are.
Yes.
it wasn't
It
7,000.
It was never 7.
No.
Look at what it was.
It was 5, now it's
and what it
3,500.
is, and just make sure that you agree that it shouldn't revert back to what it was.
Because the option we talked about, I know the planning board didn't want to do this, but to go to the town council and say, we want to keep it the way
As
it is,
is.
and just, the amendment is to strike the sunset clause.
Yeah, that's a
for now.
possibility.
That's one
Absolutely.
thing Mark had brought that up as an option. But we need to, the planning board, like, there needs to be a consensus as to.
Yeah. Well, why don't we think about it overnight and pick up again tomorrow at noon?
Okay.
Because we've been at this now for about 2.5 hours, and I think that's about as long as we can sit without starting to.
One thing I did catch, and this is kind of in the detail area. The trigger for the SUP right now is for the volume is 45,000, which is a little low, I think, given the square footages and stuff. So the 65,000, which is the maximum volume, is 15 times the maximum floor area. But the 45,000 volume trigger is only like 13 times.
What does the volume limitations prevent?
It prevents you from building by increasing the volume by going up, essentially. I mean, you could in theory build a, you know, a house with a whole lot of,
So you're this ensures that no one goes up 32 feet with a square.
well, there's also a provision against flat roof, but you could do a fairly shallow pitch roof, 7 and 12, and you could go up to 32 feet. And you could also go out horizontally with a one-story building and max out the whole square footage, and then go up to the limit as well. So I don't know that it's that vital, frankly. It's hard. This is the problem with writing these things. It's hard to imagine how that would get abused until somebody comes along and successfully abuses it, and then you go, oh, how do we let them get away with that? But that was the thinking behind it.
Yeah,
The other option too is that remember that the living space is only finished living space. So if you had somebody put in and garages are excluded, what if you had a house that had this living space but had a 5-car garage attached to it? There's nothing to prevent that right now.
I know.
You could have an 8-car garage if you wanted, because it doesn't count towards living area, and the only thing that would stop that would be the volume.
If it was attached.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
If
and
it
the
was
volume
attached.
calculations, I think, were done as a response to the inventory of larger homes, or potentially larger homes. Back when for some reason I brought this today, the comp plan from 2016 is coming up.
I still have the boards,
It's-
they're in the hallway.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
so
should pull
those are
that in
very-
tomorrow.
They are.
Because
That'd
it was,
be nice to have tomorrow,
house.
yeah,
I
because
think-
those are big houses.
I mean,
And that, so that was really, that's where that volume, I think
Mm-hmm.
I recall came from. I forget who did it, maybe James Bailey, he's a
Yeah.
mathematician.
yeah.
Was saying he could calculate volume for.
I mean, imagine a
As they were
single-story house with 15-foot ceilings, you know?
Well, there is one in Southwest Point where there's a lot of volume in the house. The whole house isn't 2-story. There's a foyer that's like the size of this room practically. So maybe that's where the volume comes into play?
But I
Yeah.
want to argue that, and this is just from my perspective, I don't care what people do with their houses inside the home. I
Right.
think they should be totally free to design it any way they wish.
Sure.
I think the planning board's role is to, quote, protect the neighbors from unsightly buildings. It's the exterior that I see.
Right,
is-
I
But
don't
that's-
know if it accomplishes that, because you're not taking into consideration anyone's view shed or, I mean,
Which
what
we
I
should
think is an attractive building, you might,
Right.
Yeah.
say that's,
Right.
that's not an attractive building. But without view sheds, it's.
But I just don't see.
But-
And no one would build anything if we would be able to build anything if we had to take into consideration view sheds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think you made the point before, Gail, that, you know, about architecture. You know, it's more, not so much the size, but more towards the architecture.
well, I'm looking
Correct.
at some of these limitations, and I think it's to point the architecture to a certain
Direction.
direction.
Yeah. that's-
Yeah.
And we are seeing a lot, I was always pretty stuck on, and still think we should have regulations in regard to tearing old homes down, in very, public areas, on main streets and what have you, and at least if they want to tear them down, have them rebuild a historic structure. That's a whole nother thing we can discuss, but I do think that some of the architects are coming up with really great designs of a contemporary, yet like a Cape-style house with a contemporary flair to it. And a lot of them are low-lying, and I think some of them are really attractive. That's just my opinion, but because taste is a matter of
Subjective.
opinion.
Yeah.
Very subjective.
It is.
Seems like everything's a demo, involves demolition right now, like,
Yeah.
at least every other.
But then there's the Captain Willis house. I don't think that's a win, but then that's my taste.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that will be torn down.
Your mileage may vary.
Yeah.
But,
Okay. Thank you. Sam, you gonna be
Yeah.
able to come back tomorrow or not?
oh, and miss this camaraderie and fun?
He's
All
on the
right.
edge of his seat.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for coming, and thank everybody for all your work today. It was great.